Welcome back to my first episode here from my new apartment. It's been, I guess, a month and a half or so from the move, and I think probably even maybe a week or two before that, since I had made the previous episode. So it's been a long break, but hoping to get back into things and keep it moving now here. I've been recently getting into some reading that I want to start talking about, and also been doing some work on the Spirit of Utopia review and preparing some material. I didn't want to quite dive into that yet until I've got things really well laid out and just have a template. And also I want to get a little bit more mixed media going in that episode. I want to see if I can try to incorporate some of the maybe some more imagery or just putting some text up on the screen. So it's going to be a little bit of a new adventure for me in terms of just learning that technology and integrating that on, at least on the YouTube front. Obviously it won't come through as much on the SoundCloud aspect, but today I was going to talk mostly on the idea of contextualizing ideas historically, and the quote that I wanted to kind of start off with was one that is related to Buddhism, and this is like a little bit tangential, but it's just something that has been kind of running as a bit of an undercurrent through my thinking about some of these things, which is that every moment is death and a rebirth. And the reason that I kind of relate this to contextualizing things is that, with maybe a math equation, that's something that's static for every moment in time. 2 plus 2 is going to equal 4, and there's not really any reason to have to provide any broader context to that. But for any more important cultural or social or political movements, all of those are extremely important to think about all of the other factors that are going on around them, and really just see the vast web of things that are influencing, and this kind of network effect. And so the reason that I think that this has kind of all started coming to the forefront for me is that I recently purchased this book, K-Punk, by Mark Fisher, and this is published on Repeater Books. So I've got it here, and it's got the foreword by Simon Reynolds. He was another music critic and blogger around the same time as Mark Fisher, and then it was basically put together by Darren Ambrose. So all of these are a bunch of different essays that were written by Fisher during his lifetime. Fisher passed away in 2017, January. So this is essentially just taking his works and trying to put that together into this essentially almost encyclopedia for people to have it all in one place. And so it's blog posts, essays, and taking it all and putting it into this one spot. Even for myself, the idea of kind of like starting with an introduction or a foreword perhaps is something that I might not have always done if I was reading in high school. For a book that I didn't enjoy, it was reading the bare minimum. And now with this book, the foreword by Simon Reynolds, I feel like that was just as important to me, if almost not more important than the first couple of essays, because it really gave me a lens into Mark Fisher's life, and I felt like I really wanted to know more about who he was, just because the works that Fisher is writing seem so influential. I felt like I needed to know and understand how he could possibly be coming up with some of these ideas. What was really shaping him, and what could I be doing to shape myself in that fashion. So Simon Reynolds, knew him personally, not so much face to face, but a lot of it was internet contact, and that kind of leads into another aspect here is the sort of the blogosphere aspect of Fisher's life. So he is writing kind of early-ish in his career. Started off this blog K-Punk in 2003, and he's also, Simon Reynolds started another blog as well in 2003. So the two of them both started up right around the same time. I think Simon started his 3 months earlier, and so they're part of this network effect, and it's earlier days of the internet. These thoughts are just getting fired back and forth, and it's kind of before social media has really taken off, and they're really using this forum to just be able to basically be able to, I guess, like, do this idea of like contextualizing, okay, this is what I've got going on in my life here, this is what you've got going on in your life here, how can we, synthesize each other's ideas, but also how can we critique each other's ideas. And Fisher, particularly, at least I don't know as much about Reynolds' work, but Fisher is really drawing from a huge range of different topics. So the way that this book is organized, excuse me, so part one is breaking down into, it's called Methods of Dreaming books, and then the next one is Screens, Dreams, and Specters, Films and Television. So we're sort of looking at books, then film and television, and then we've got the next one, Choose Your Weapons, Writing on Music. And then part 4 is For Now, Our Desire is Nameless, his political writings. Part 5, We Have to Invent the Future, is his interviews. And then part 6, We Are Not Here to Entertain You, some reflections. And then part 7 is called Acid Communism, which was an unfinished introduction to a book that he was writing. And so he's got all of these different influences from culture and politics and other people that he's talking to on the blogosphere. So it's, people that aren't even alive still that he's getting things from in literature or music, and then people that are, active online, and all of these ideas are flying back and forth. And I just got a sense that there was just so much life there, and it made me really sad to find out that he had ultimately committed suicide, just because there was just so much power in these ideas, and it gives me a lot of motivation to dig into them and see, in any way that I can continue them forward. I feel like I have so much work to to do to even to get my feet wet in understanding some of the stuff that he's talking about. But let me try to get to one of the pages I was at in his reflections. But the reflection I was reading last night, yeah, I mean, he says in the first reflection in here, he's talking about it's called 1 year later, a year after he started K-Punk. So this would have been 2004. He says, in short, and no exaggeration, it's made my life worth living. And so, this shows like truly how powerful this stuff really was to him. And I mean, hopefully, like this type of energy is something that I can maybe find the same sort of energy in a blogosphere, podcast network. I think I'm already kind of digging into some of that in regards to just listening to some other people's works and doing some readings, talking with friends and family about some of the ideas that I'm coming across. So definitely the Fisher book has got me thinking about this idea of contextualizing, and then the other sort of thing that this more broadly was reminding me of was the spirit of Utopia, and also how that really was getting my feet wet in terms of some of the older context, some more of the historical philosophers and even composers that it was kind of interesting, because it seemed like some of them almost were composers and philosophers and I think that sort of as time has gone on, maybe people have branched off and become more specialized, but early on, like in Aristotle, it was like the polymaths, like they have the philosophy, physics, mathematics. They're doing everything, and so I think that some of the people back in like the 1800s that I was introduced to in the Spirit of Utopia, it wasn't just me reading that book cover to cover. And a lot of it was, okay, I've read like 2 pages, but now I need to go sit down and listen to some of the music, and I need to read up on that musician, and I need to see where they were living and who they were collaborating with, or which king was sort of sponsoring their work. And so all of that stuff I'm learning, it just really impacts the outcome of how things actually work in the world. And for someone who is more of a math and science leaning person, at least historically for myself, I'm slowly opening up more to these kind of socio-political ideas, and it's really important, I think, for me to see kind of how nothing exists in a vacuum. And I guess earlier on in like coming across the Michael Brooks show, he talked about this with Sam Harris, and kind of gave Sam Harris a little bit of a hard time, saying, you can't just talk about like the Middle East as their holy book as it just standing alone, and like the ideas that are in the book itself are the reason that there's so much turmoil in the region. You've got to look at how some of the wars have been funded by the U.S. imperialism and that kind of thing. Not that it's all just because of one holy book. And that's an idea that Sam Harris, I think, keeps himself in a little bit of a bubble, and operates under the idea of, oh, well, science will be able to get us to morals, and I'm blanking on the name of his book, but I think that there's one book exactly where he's basically saying, if we go far enough along in science, like, we'll basically be able to build up a perfect system of morals. And the more I see all of this, how complex all of these different fields tie into one another, and that there's no one truth, except maybe like mathematics is almost this language that stands outside of certain things, but even that, it's at the cutting edge of mathematics, it's like who's getting the money to who's getting the funding to study which new ideas in the mathematics departments. It's still not 100% pure, and I think that that's something that is slowly, the gears are finally starting to churn for me, and now the things are primed, and I'm definitely excited for what's to come, and I'll definitely be spending a lot of time with K-Punk and looking at some of these different essays, and also hopefully getting back to another podcast soon for another round on the spirit of Utopia. So I will be talking to you guys with another one shortly.